Hey, what's up everybody? It's Jason. I hope you're doing well. Today we're doing a brand new album review, and this time it's Machine Gun Kelly's latest, Tickets to My Downfall. So I guess for this review we should start off with the most obvious question, which is, what the hell? I mean, no one told me that Machine Gun Kelly was gonna go ahead and leave the rap game to pursue a career as a one-man Blink-182 cover band. But on the real, the first song I ever heard by Machine Gun Kelly was a song called Bad Things with Camila Cabello that came out back in like 2017, I think. And from that, I just kind of classified him as a generic pop rapper. Kind of like a discount G-Eazy, I guess. And at this point, I feel like I should go ahead and state for the record that I am in no way, shape, or form a fan of G-Eazy. Not after what he did to Halsey. But obviously that song Bad Things didn't exactly inspire me to keep tabs on Machine Gun Kelly as an artist. And then the only other time I really heard from him before this album was his little brief appearance, I guess you can call it, in Bird Box. You know, that Netflix film that came out a year or two ago with Sandra Bullock where the killers discriminated against non-blind people. Remember? You remember. And obviously I have no idea what caused him to change direction so drastically in his musical career. I mean, literally his latest album before this, which came out in 2019, was primarily a rap album. So imagine my surprise when I sit down and listen to this record and I start hearing songs that really awaken the dormant 2000s emo kid inside of me. But eventually, after I got over the initial shock of this album, I gotta say that I actually really enjoyed it. Usually when I choose an album to review, I'll listen to it 3 or 4 times just to make sure I get really everything out of it that I need to. But with this album, I started actually listening to it just, for fun as part of my everyday listening. So I think in total, I've listened to it through and through maybe 7 or 8 times. And don't get me wrong, the nostalgia I feel when listening to those songs is definitely a big part of why. But I feel like it's also going to hit other people in the same way. But aside from that, I also give this album a lot of credit for pretty much knowing exactly what it is. I mean, this is just a very genre punk rock kind of album, and it never tries to stray away from that. Every song on the album is about 3 minutes to 3.5 minutes long, and because of that, they never really overstay their welcome, or more importantly, overreach to try and become something that they're not. There's a slight caveat to that, however. There's about 2 or 3 songs on this album that, while still mostly punk rock, have actually added elements of hip-hop or rap in terms of production, but we'll talk about those later. So the first song off this album is called Title Track, very meta, and it's actually a really great way to lean into the album. The verses for it are very soft, led by an acoustic guitar, and then all of a sudden at the chorus it breaks out into this very, I want to call it almost like a Green Day-esque chorus. The guitars are loud, the drums are loud, the bass is loud, so if you don't really love this song, you're not going to have a great time with the rest of the album. I will say, however, that the downside of this song for me is that vocally nothing really interesting was happening, so in that sense, while it was great to kind of lean into what kind of album this was really going to be, there's not a lot really to sink your teeth into. From there, however, I do think the album gets considerably more interesting thanks to songs like Kiss Kiss and Bloody Valentine. So Kiss Kiss I actually ended up loving mostly because of the instrumentation behind it. In the beginning of the song, there's a guitar riff, and it's I don't know exactly what effect to call it, but it sounds either like muted or like really far away. It plays a couple of chords, and then it stops, and then all of a sudden the drums and the rest of the band comes in. And that's just kind of one of my weird specific music preferences. For some reason, I'm just like a really big sucker for that kind of a sound in a song. And in this case, it made me want to slam my bedroom door shut and tell my mom that she doesn't get it. Good times. Bloody Valentine's a little harder to articulate for me, but there's something about the cadence and the production of that song that really just stuck out to me. If I had to pinpoint it though, I would say that the reason I ended up enjoying this song so much was that the overall vibe was very smooth and low-key, but the instrumentation was actually still really high energy. I know, it makes no sense at all, and those two things are actually quite paradoxical. But for some reason, in combination with one another, it makes a song really just easy and enjoyable to listen to. There is, however, the glaring issue that this song almost sounds beat for beat like a Blink-182 song, and I guess more specifically like a mid-2010s Blink-182 song. It even has that like sonic drum thing between the chorus and the verse, if you know what I'm talking about. Overall though, the fact that this song sounds like the song that another band can make doesn't really bother me too much because I can still enjoy it for what it is. And now we get to my favorite part of any review, which is talking about my favorite track off of the album. In this case, it was Forget Me To featuring Halsey. And the first thing I want to talk about is Halsey. I mean, she sings in a key that's considerably higher than she would in her normal songs, and I had no idea she had that kind of range in her to sustain that and go even higher than that. And there's also kind of like a growl to her voice that you hear in this song, which makes me want her to do more of this type of music, actually. And I really hate to say this because this obviously isn't her album, but Halsey is definitely a big part of why this song worked for me. There's also a really strong bass line that goes throughout the verse and a fun kind of guitar riff that they play in the pre-chorus that got me really excited. And I just think that because the vocals and the instruments are so well done that this song is really the best of what this album has to offer. But if I'm being picky, there is just one thing on this song that I would change. So from the best I can tell, the chorus of the song goes a little bit something like this. And that totally works fine for the chorus. But here's my oddly specific problem with that. For some reason, the second or third time I heard this song, I had an itch to hear a certain sound in the chorus, and it has to do with the strumming pattern. So there's a lot of tropes in this album already that just, like I already talked about, kind of fit into my nostalgia of 2000s emo music. So when I heard this song for the second or third time, for some reason, there was just a really small part of me that wished that the strumming pattern went a little something like this instead. And a lot of you are probably thinking to yourself right now, what the hell is the difference between those two things? But to me, this is the main difference. In the song, what I heard was a lot of, I'll try and do this, gently, a lot of straight up and down, up and down, up and down. But for some reason, when I think of these kinds of songs, in the chorus, the string pattern is actually broken up just a little bit to give more breathing room. And for some reason, that just sets the world right for me. It's also just very possible that I was looking for an excuse to play guitar on this review. So like I said earlier, there are also a couple of songs on this album that have elements of hip-hop and pop in their production. And I guess you would think that would be like a knock against the song or the album as a whole, but for some reason, there's just enough elements of hip-hop and pop in the songs that make it blend really well with the rest of the instrumentation in the song. There's no point in any of the songs where I feel like those sounds ended up taking over entirely or started competing against the main sounds of the song for the spotlight. And the three songs I'm talking about are Drunk Face, All I Know, and My Ex's Best Friend. But I'm actually going to leave those first two out of this because I mainly want to talk about My Ex's Best Friend. To me, it completely deviates from the rest of the album because it's basically a pop song on an otherwise punk rock album. But with that said, that's actually not really a knock either, because I feel like when Machine Gun Kelly decided to tell his record producers, hey, I want to make this kind of an album, there had to have been some sort of compromise where he had to make quote unquote like a radio friendly song. And I would say My Ex's Best Friend, which is featuring Black Bear, is that song. But judging the song on its own merits, it's actually still a really enjoyable song. It's very, basic in execution, but with that, it's also very easy to listen to. As far as negatives go for this album, I really only have two, but I would definitely say that they affect my overall view of the album. The first one you might actually already be able to guess. I've already mentioned a couple of times in this review that there's certain songs or sounds that really remind me of other bands. And with that, there's nothing really on this album that you haven't already heard before. I mean, instrumentation-wise, while I am definitely a sucker for this kind of sound, it is rather generic and you could probably copy and paste it into another song without even noticing. And on top of that, lyrically, I didn't find anything that was too interesting that would really elevate the song or make it its own. And of course, it could also be argued that this sound has been done better by other bands previously. The other big issue I had with this was probably a little bit more personal. I don't think it's going to be a widespread issue for a lot of listeners, but there's a lot of fourth wall breaking in these songs. And I'll give you an example of what I mean. At the end of one of his songs, I think it's called Concert for Aliens, in the studio recording version of that song, he says at the very end, oh man, I messed up the lyrics, but keep that in there. And for me, hearing stuff like that actually just really ends up taking me out of the music. It's certainly an artist's choice to keep that kind of stuff in there and make it a little bit more raw, even like authentic. But personally, I find that stuff really distracting, and like I already said, it ends up taking me out of the music. But again, overall, I really did enjoy this album, almost purely for the fact that I felt like it knew exactly what it wanted to be, and it didn't try to be anything else. I always love it when musicians can switch between genres so seamlessly, and for me, obviously this album scratched an itch that I didn't even know that I had. So thank you, Machine Gun Kelly. And with that, overall, I would leave this album at a 7 out of 10. Alright, so that's going to do it for this review. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Be sure to leave your thoughts and comments on the album below, and if you enjoyed the content, please like or subscribe. It really helps out the channel, and it's also free. But until next time, stay safe, be kind. Thank you.